I'm Evilise Page, and thanks for listening to the Believe Big podcast, the show where we take a deep dive into your healing with health experts, integrative practitioners, biblical faith leaders, and cancer thrivers from around the globe. Welcome to today's episode on the Believe Big podcast. My name is Evilise Page, and it's an honor to be with you today. I am so excited today about our guest, Dr. Veronique Desaulniers, better known as Dr. V. She is the founder of Breast Cancer Conqueror and the 7 Essential System. Dr. V has personally conquered breast cancer twice, which gives her an empathetic perspective to understand other women facing a healing journey. Her signature book, Heal Breast Cancer Naturally, is a #1 Amazon bestseller in 10 categories and 5 countries. Dr. V has also bridged the gap between the pink breast cancer movement and natural medicine by creating a revolutionary program called How to Survive and Thrive, Conquering Breast Cancer with Conventional Treatments and Natural Medicine. Welcome to the show, Dr. V.
Thank you so much, Evilise. I'm excited to be here. We've kind of known each other through our businesses, but we've never personally met. So it's an honor to be on your podcast. Thank you.
Yes. Well, we like to begin the podcast with a question our listeners love to find out from our guests. And so what is your favorite health tip?
Well, it's a 2-part answer. So the first part of that answer is if you are recently diagnosed with cancer of any kind, just know that cancer, and specifically I'm talking about breast cancer, is rarely a medical emergency. You have the time to allow that diagnosis to sit in and settle into your body and to understand what cancer is not and the various choices that you have in order to be able to reverse this disease. Secondly, if you have been on this healing journey for a while, there is always a way. And unfortunately, when doctors use a classification, they often scare you into thinking, well, I'm at this stage, so that must mean I'm at the end. But I can tell you through my experience, professionally and personally, I've seen so many women who've been in a late stage cancer and have found ways to be able to reverse that. So there is always hope. And Evilise, you are a perfect example of that, right?
Yeah, well, I love that. And thank you for sharing that, because I know that many of our listeners who are actually listening to you right now are feeling hopeless. So just by those very words, I know is filling their souls and things that they really need to hear. And I have to say that I just love your story. I love your transparency. You too have overcome cancer twice. You overcame your first breast cancer diagnosis in 2006. And from that, your Heal Breast Cancer Naturally book and healing retreats were birthed. But then 10 years later, you faced a recurrence, and you share that your second diagnosis was more difficult. Can you share with us about why you felt it was more difficult?
Well, I was 5 years into being known as the Breast Cancer Conqueror. So I was helping women from sun up to sundown, not practicing what I was preaching, just really taking care of too many people versus taking care of myself. So I really created the perfect storm for cancer to show up again. It was difficult because I was the image of healing breast cancer. And so when I was faced with it again, it was pretty devastating, humbling, so I really had to do a lot of soul searching and ask myself, am I a fraud? Does this system really work? Am I fooling myself? What is going on here? But then I just, once I let that diagnosis sit in, settle in again, I said, no, I know I can do this. So I didn't share it publicly. I shared it with a few friends and family members. And for 3 years, I dug in really hard. I changed the way I worked. I stopped coaching one-on-one. I trained other coaches. I took time off every single day for myself to do my meditations, my enemas, my juicing, all of that. And I had this vision of being on stage because I used to host the live retreats, that I would be on stage and one day I would share my second healing journey. And 3 years later, August 2018, I was able to do that at one of my retreats in Atlanta. And of course, everybody in the audience was shocked and there were a lot of tears from me and from them. But it just, it was just really gratifying, satisfying, and just affirming. It really built a lot of confidence in myself and in others that, we need to pay attention to those little signals and understand that even though you think you are cancer-free and no evidence of disease, right? We must continue to practice those things that got us well in the first place.
Yes, 100%. And, when I was diagnosed with a second cancer, mine was not a recurrence, but it was a second cancer due to genetic links that I have, something called Lynch syndrome this past fall. I felt similarly. And I still remember my husband telling me, Evilise, is the success of Believe Big dependent on you having a perfect journey? And I just sat there and I'm like, you're right. Life is flawed and we cannot control every outcome as much as we'd like to. Life is not a formula. And many times I believe that through our challenges, that becomes an avenue for what God wants us to do for others. And that has, I believe, have been proven to be true for both of us. And like you, I was pouring out to excess and I didn't have, really strong boundaries on my time. And even though my physical tank was full with all the right things and my spiritual tank was full with all the right things, my emotional tank was below empty. It was on fumes. And so it was just really a reminder of how all parts of our soul or body or mind are so important in this healing journey. It's not just the physical that many times, yes, they are important, but so many times we focus on that and we are not really diving into how are our souls doing? How are we doing spiritually? Because that affects our physical bodies.
Absolutely.
And so can you share, because I know a lot of people who are on this journey and they know your story. And so how did your monitoring change once you were healed the second time?
I wasn't as intense as I was obviously during my second healing journey. So rather than quarterly blood testing and, doing all the things, I was able to stretch it out to 6 months. And now I'm 6 years out. It'll be 6 years in August. So I test once a year. I check for circulating tumor cells. I always check my inflammatory markers, probably, twice a year. I check my hormones. I check my methylation, all the things that I need to know. I do thermography, ultrasound, MRIs, just to be able to stay on top of everything.
That's great. So your mission is to inspire women to be proactive with their health and to make them make more informed decisions. And you have a signature process that you've created called the 7 Essentials System. Your first essential system you call Let Food Be Your Medicine. And I know you're in the same camp as myself in that it seems like every month there's some health guru claiming that this diet is the best diet and you need to get on this diet for cancer, when in actuality it needs to be individualized depending on a patient's needs and where they are in the treatment process. And I know you use the nutrition genome test that I love, and it covers over 100 relevant genes for a whole body analysis. Can you share why food is the foundation of our health?
Well, food feeds our body. And so it's no different than a computer, garbage in, garbage out, right? And so the most important thing to remember is eat organic and clean as much as you can. Lots of veggies. I suggest minimal fruits, depending on, a lot of factors. And I also like to get our clients to test their blood sugars because for me, during my second healing journey, I had juiced for 30 years. And so I really ramped up the juicing. But then after I juiced, I just didn't feel good. I said, something is off here. So I thought of Dr. Nasha Winter's metabolic approach to cancer. I said, well, let me check my blood sugar. Sure enough, off the charts. So I had to change how I juiced and I had to do more blending instead of juicing. So I started monitoring my blood sugar and I recognized that I was metabolically inflexible. So I really had to change my eating patterns. I did hardcore keto for 6 months just to check it out. I'm a one big experiment, right, for our community. And it's not for me, not long term, but it really taught me a lot of things about food and the amounts that we eat and how it affects our blood sugar. So checking your blood sugar can really give you a clue as to the food that you're eating. But, you mentioned the nutrition genome. It really helped me so much because it showed me that I don't manufacture and absorb vitamin D very well. So I have to use a liposomal type. I don't convert beta carotenes to vitamin A. I have to supplement with vitamin A. It just goes down the list of how many things I changed when I did that test. So I really encourage everyone to get that done.
Yeah, it's an amazing test. And I completely agree. She was very helpful on my second journey as well, and just sharing about that. And I did a temporary keto as well, just to really dive into my health and minimize the insulin levels in my body, just so that my body could heal. And now I would say I'm probably on a modified keto, and probably 70 grams or less that I eat. And that's where I feel best. And honestly, the nutrition genome shares that, which is, it's just amazing. That there are some things that we need therapeutically to heal. And then there are other things that are more long-term that we can incorporate. Like you're saying, that if we have issues with methylation, that there are tools that are available with food, real food, that we can incorporate. And I love that you shared about the juicing, because some people say, oh, I just need green juice. And they don't realize that it could be actually doing you more harm than good, which is why it's so important for someone to be followed by an integrative practitioner, or be a part of a program like yours that you're closely monitored, where people aren't just doing things that they believe to be good when in fact it's actually harmful. So I'm glad that you mentioned that as well. Number 2 on your essential list is to reduce your toxic exposure. There's so many ways, but can you share your top 2 ways that a person can reduce their toxic load?
Well, first of all, especially with breast cancer, you have to be aware of all the chemical estrogens that are in the environment. That's a big one. So get rid of the plastics and the phthalates and the parabens, all those things that will mimic and stimulate estrogen production and are hormone disruptors. Looking at the environment in your home, what kind of cleaners are you using? What are you putting on your skin? So, that's the big one, becoming aware of your exposure and minimizing that. Secondly, is to detoxify your body on a regular basis. Sweating is one of the best ways. The BUS study they did was they looked at blood, urine, and sweat, and they found that sweat had the highest levels of environmental toxins and heavy metals compared to, just the blood and the urine with other ways. So getting in a sauna, using a biomat, getting outside and really building up a sweat. And then coffee enemas is another one of my favorite ones to really stimulate that liver production and get rid of, the junk that's floating in our gallbladder and bile, and boosting the glutathione levels in your body.
Those are great. And, do you have a certain brand that you use for your coffee enemas? Because that's a really important thing for people to realize, that don't just go on Amazon and get any coffee or get any kit. There are certain ones that are made with stainless steel and organic coffee. And so do you have a favorite that we could add to our show notes?
S.A. Wilson is a great brand. I mean, they use it in a lot of the clinics, cancer clinics, they use that. It's blonde coffee, and it's highest in the phytonutrients that help to stimulate that liver.
Perfect. Yes, we will add that in the show notes for people who are interested in finding out more about that. Number 3 is balance your energy. And, there's stressors all around us. And for many people, that is easier said than done. How can one practically do this?
So when you think about our bodies, we are 1 billion physical matter. The rest is all energy, right? So we balance our energy through chiropractic care, acupuncture, getting grounded, getting connected to the earth, hemp mats, moving your body, making sure that you get plenty of movement every day. The biggest thing for me when it comes to breast cancer and balancing your energy is balancing your hormones. Unfortunately, conventional medicine has really instilled fear in women about their hormones. You have a hormone-driven cancer, so that means we have to shut off your hormones. When in reality, that's when we need our hormones the most. So your balanced hormones do not cause cancer. It's all the exogenous estrogens in the environment that are driving that. The other thing that could be problematic for you and your hormones is the methylation issue. So methylation means metabolizing, being able to break down things. And some women, and I'm one of them, have a genetic SNP that prevents me, from breaking down those hormones properly. So you end up with residual toxic metabolites that recirculate in the blood, and that can certainly trigger cancer pathways. So the good news is you can support your methylation pathways with simple nutrition, simple supplementation. And so that's how we balance our energy. And sleep. Sleep is another big one. Make sure you're getting really good restorative sleep.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that about hormones and balancing your hormones, because yes, I am one of those as well, that my SNPs show not only 1, but 3. That shows that I absolutely cannot be on hormone replacement therapy, even the bioidentical ones. And that's why it's so important for each individual to look at their genetics, epigenetics, and speak to their integrative doctors, because it may be okay for one person, but it may be different for another. I've heard things from whether you have your ovaries in your uterus, and if you don't have it. There's so many variables that are considered when dealing with hormones. And so I'm really thankful, that you mentioned that. So number 4 is heal your emotional wounds. And it's one that I thought I was attending to, but I realized that I had a lot of work to do in this area. I think many women tend to bury things, and over time, these things bubble up and you have to address them. And many times it can lead to burnout and so many other things. So it's so important. So what is a way that you found most helpful to heal from past emotional wounds?
There was so much that I did from a very young age, the typical, psychotherapy, therapist, that sort of thing. But during my second healing journey, I used the technology called EVOX, which is electronic voice analysis. And basically you speak into a little microphone and you have a headset on and you have your hand on a cradle, and it reads the stress in your voice on the statement that you're making. And it puts back the frequencies into your body that help to neutralize that stress. So it's very seamless. It's very easy, but it's very powerful. I mean, the shifts that I saw with eBox was amazing for me. And you can do it virtually. You don't have to do it, 1-to-1.
It's amazing. I've never heard of that. Is that a machine that you have, or can you send a link to that?
Yeah. Do you know about Zyto? Zyto?
No.
Okay. So Zyto is a hand cradle. And it does bioenergetic testing. It checks the acupuncture meridians and the resistance to thousands of different substances. It'll show you where your body is weak. So with that same cradle, you could also do voice pattern, reprogramming, basically. Just fabulous. Yes. So I did a lot of EFT. I had 2 different EFT coaches. I did a lot of inner child work. Really had to remind that little girl that she was safe and nurtured and nobody would ever hurt her again. And it was just so much journaling and just, using the Heart Mass Inner Balance app really was helpful when I meditated, because I thought I was getting in a deep state of meditation until I started using the app, because it checks your heart rate variability to see if you're in sympathetic or parasympathetic mode. And I was still in sympathetic mode. So I had to go even deeper into my meditation, and really, it teaches you what it feels like to really be in that parasympathetic relaxation mode, because you have this little thing that goes around, a little wheel. And if you're in the red zone, blue zone, or green zone, you want to be in the green zone. So train your brain and your body to learn what it feels like to be calm, because we don't know. We think we're calm, but we're still...
Yes.
Like hamsters on a wheel.
Yes. That's really fascinating. I'll have to definitely look into both of those things. And I know we could spend an entire episode on number 5, which is embracing biological dentistry. Can you briefly share with those listening what biological dentistry is and why it's important?
A biological dentist understands that your teeth are living organs, and that they are connected to all of your organs through the acupuncture meridian system. So if you have a hunk of metal or root canal sitting on the breast meridians, and there's 4 teeth on each side, upper, and then 2 on the bottom, that relate specifically to the breast meridian. And I can tell you 99% of the time we see a connection. So the biological dentist will understand that you want to remove toxicity in your mouth, because it's going to affect everything in your body, your microbiome and your lymphatic system. So if you have silver fillings, those are 50% mercury. Mercury is the most toxic element on the planet. So you want to have those replaced in the proper way. There's a group of biological dentists that use the SMART technique, safe mercury amalgam removal technique. So SMART. And they use protective equipment for you and for the dentist and the assistant, because you don't want to be inhaling those mercury vapors. And then they replace the mercury fillings with things that are biocompatible. They're non-toxic. A root canal is like having a dead organ in your body, a dead appendix, dead gallbladder. It drifts toxicity no matter how aseptic or clean they try to make it. Many studies have shown that, when you analyze 500 root canals, symptomatic or not, they all have those very toxic anaerobic bacteria. And something very interesting that I just discovered a few weeks ago, some doctors are calling breast cancer an infectious disease because of the infection in the mouth and the lymphatic system and how it drains down into the breast tissue. Because they found in tumors, that were taken out from mastectomy or lumpectomy, when they analyzed those, they had the same toxic bacteria that were found in the mouth. Fascinating. And I have, personally myself, I had 2 issues, top and bottom on the breast meridian, infected teeth. One of them, it was an empty tooth. It was a dead tooth, but I didn't know it was a root resorption. It was an autoimmune disease. So there's such a big connection there. Periodontal disease. Women who have periodontal disease are twice as likely to develop breast cancer. So it's such an important aspect. And sometimes women resist it. And, we push. Finally, they get it done and their numbers drop. It's fascinating.
It really is. And, Jimmy and I just switched to a biological dentist here in Fort Collins, and they are amazing. I'm going to have her come on to the podcast because she does use the SMART system, and just even the cleanings and how it's different than a regular dentist, and how they oxygenate, like ozone. Yes, on my gum line. And I mean, it's just healing at its best when it comes to your teeth. So yeah, I'm really grateful that you shared that. It's amazing the amount of toxins that, now they don't use the mercury fillings, but in our generation they did. And just the amount of toxins that are being put into our bodies is great. And I'm actually in the process of we'll go into fixing the ones that I've had, because she shared that they are kind of leaching now. And so it was not a surprise, but a surprise to me. And so I'm really grateful to have that resource. I know listeners are listening from all over the U.S. Is there a directory of biological dentists that you know of that someone, say in California or Maryland or Colorado, can look up to find a good one in their state?
Yeah. If you go to IAOMT, I always forget what it stands for, but it has to do with biological dentists.
Okay. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll also put that on the show notes for people to click on. Number 6 is repair with therapeutic plants. And our audience is well aware of the incredible benefits of things like mistletoe therapy. But for today's podcast, can you share briefly about what you call herbal chemo?
Yes. So these are natural substances that will literally target the cancer cells. And we could spend a whole afternoon talking about that. So in simple terms, things like curcumin, melatonin. Melatonin is a cytotoxic hormone. It literally targets and kills cancer cells. Things like the nutrient pterostilbene that's found in blueberries. Products like poly-MDA. Products like salicinium, which is basically, it's also known as Orosal. It's a glyconutrient that disables the production of nagolase from the cancer cells. The nagolase is what puts your immune system to sleep. So it doesn't directly kill the cancer cells, but it enables the immune system to really wake up and attack the cancer cells. High dose vitamin C, these are all things that can really, target those cancer cells. And to recognize one thing is that even though you may have had the tumor removed and the doctor saying, there's no evidence of disease, you must continue to monitor your body. And I'm a firm believer in looking at circulating tumor cells and stem cells, breast cancer stem cells, because those are the little cells that wake up one day and cause metastasis. So there's many companies out there. I mean, one of my favorite is RGCC, or the grease test. And they'll match 50 different natural substances or 50 chemotherapy and or chemotherapy agents against your cancer cells to see which ones are the most effective. So
yeah, I love that because, so many times patients, and you talked about this at the very beginning, which is slow down. You have time most of the time to really gain information, and they're rushed into treatment. And they'll say, well, we're going to give you this chemotherapeutic agent because it's known to be used for this type of breast cancer or this type of cancer in general. And your tumor may not respond to that. So you go through several rounds and it's not effective. And they're like, well, let's try this one now. And now your body's been through a difficult time and it's, affected your immune system. So that test is amazing because it will show you what natural therapies and chemotherapeutic agents are going to be effective for your specific tumor type. That's really a great tip for people to know that they can do. And then your last essential, number 7, is very early detection with things like thermography, specific blood tests that you mentioned, and cutting edge technology. I use the Sonosign imaging here in Colorado. And in the past, I've used thermography when I was in Maryland. But can you share with our audience why you recommend thermography with or without ultrasound or breast imaging versus a mammogram?
Well, mammography has had its heyday. I think people are waking up. I mean, we know radiation causes cancer. Duh. When you're squishing the breast, what if there's a little tumor in there and you're causing compression? What if it spreads, millions of cells into the bloodstream? And, 48% of the time, mammography is inaccurate anyway. And with the increase of dense breasts, they're missing so many tumors. And so if you choose to do a mammogram, always back it up with an ultrasound. And Sonosign is a great tool because it does thousands of slices and images. Thermography, on the other hand, there's no radiation, no compression. It will not diagnose breast cancer, but it will show you physiologically what's happening in your body and breast tissue. It can do the full body. So it gives you an indication if there's inflammation in the body and what you need to do about it. But again, don't just rely on one test. Always back it up with an ultrasound because, nothing is 100% accurate. And then, you have blood work like the RGCC and various liquid biopsies. There's tests that you can look at. That one is the cancer profile done here in Florida, where they look at the levels of HCG, pregnancy hormone. Cancer cells give that hormone off. So they check it in the urine and in the blood to see if the levels are higher. That's an indication you're producing cancer cells. There's the Gallery test, which looks at 50 different kinds of cancers. So there's a lot of options now to really be able to practice early detection and keep doing those simple tests like the inflammatory markers and your vitamin D levels, your typical CBC, CMP profiles, just keep monitoring your body because I don't really think we should say cancer-free. And I think Dr. Nasha gave me this term also is I'm no longer actively cancering. I'm not producing any more cancer, right? Our terrain is clean, so it doesn't allow cancer to take hold and start growing again.
Yes, excellent. What about the new Prenuvo MRI scans? I know they're not, they're expensive, but for someone who may not want to do a PET or a CT scan or things like that, what have you heard about that?
Well, I've had one done. I'm actually going for a retest next month. So they can't be as focused, I guess, on a specific area because, they can do full body. They can just do torso. It takes thousands of images. So in one sense, it's a little bit more accurate than a regular MRI. MRIs with contrast, we know is very toxic. So I've seen reports from women in our community who've done them, and they've been pretty accurate, like as far as the breast and other things going on in their body. So I feel pretty confident in recommending that.
Okay, excellent. I can't believe our time is already come to an end. But before we close out, is there anything that you would like to add that I have not asked you about yet?
I would have to say is believe big.
Aww.
It's so true because you must read books like You Are the Placebo by Dr. Joe Dispenza. You must believe in your heart and soul and mind that your body has the ability to heal, because every thought you think is being listened to by your cells. And we know that with the science of epigenetics, that your thoughts can literally turn on cancer-causing genes or turn them off. So really believe big in yourself and in your body's ability to heal.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. V. That was great advice, and appreciate you coming on and teaching us all about these essentials in life. And we will put your contact information along in the notes for those who may want to be a part of your program and learn more. So we appreciate you, and God bless you.
Thank you for sharing my message of hope, Evelise.
If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support our podcast, please subscribe and share it with others. Be sure to visit believebig.org to access the show notes and discover our bonus content. Thanks again, and keep believing big.